Maybe not. Maybe not. So welcome in today. Today we're going to talk about 30 years. Can you believe it's been 30 years since we've been ministering?
30 years we've been ministering.
Yeah.
30 years we've been ministering together.
I started in 94, so really for me, it's 30 years. For you, it's a lot longer because you started when you were a lot younger than I was.
Yes.
You know, well,
That's
not
true.
younger than I was. We're the same age. But you started at a younger age than I did in the church.
Yes.
Can you believe we've been doing this for 30 years?
Wow. 30 years. Yeah, it's been an adventure. 30 years since we first got married and began our family
Well,
together.
that's a whole other story in itself.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying that we have been ministering together literally for 30 years as husband and wife.
So for those of you who don't know, around 1990, I came to church. 17 years old, came to church. Kind of knew about church, grew up in church, but not in the format that I know church now. So come to this church, get introduced to Christ. I really say he was courting me at the time. He was trying to get me to have a deeper relationship with him. But I was just kind of like, I still was in my ways, wanted to be who I wanted to be. So I bounced for 3 years. Kind of, when I say bounce, I mean I left, but I also bounced back and forth between, had one foot in the world and one foot in the church. And then I rolled my car in 93. And so in 93, I came back to church. And my youth pastor at the time was like, I don't care what you do outside of here, but when you're here, we're going to use you. So I started ministering in the church, in 1993. Around 94 is when I really, really started to get deep with the Lord. So, started doing stuff, doing dance routines and teaching the youth how to dance and going out and doing outreaches. And that was kind of my first introduction to ministry.
And I had already been in the church ministering at that time in 93. I think I started fully. Wow, I don't remember how long. I know I'd been actually dancing and doing a little bit more ministry. I went at that time. Actually, I had already been involved with the dance at our church and the ministering with the ladies and the other people in the congregation. We had been doing a dance ministry with my mom and our pastor's wife, and we had been able to do some plays.
But you had been the plays. That's what I remember the most. I remember the plays you guys would do. You would put on, and those were the times I would be brought in. The family that brought me to their church would bring me in those moments because they were kind of a form of outreach the church was using. And so those I remember the most.
Yes, I really loved doing all the different plays. At that time, my favorite part of the ministry, going back to this, is that I was able to do, and I was learning how to, I was going through classes to learn how to mime. And I know a lot of people at the time were like, well, mime is a strange way of ministering. And anyway, I ended up going through a mime ministry and learning how to actually put that craft and use that craft as a ministering tool. And I really, there was a specific play, and I had never been given any type of a lead on anything, and I was very, very nervous at that time. But I used the first play that I was the actual lead in the play was, I had already been involved in the miming for a while, and anyway, I was able to use that, and I was so excited about it. And
well, if I'm correct, you were trained by the apprentice of Marcel Marceau.
Yes.
Which is the famous mime.
Yes. Yes.
Or
And
an apprentice of.
Yeah, one of them.
his.
Yes,
One of his. Yeah.
One of them that were actually involved in the ministry that are, well, in the
Training.
in the training.
Yeah.
Under Marcel Marceau, and yes.
And for those that don't know who Marcel Marceau is, Marcel Marceau, I'm just gonna be real with this, was one of the people that Michael Jackson pulled some of his moves from.
Yeah, and I really I enjoyed that so much, and I was able to actually break out of my own shell because I was afraid of doing anything. Well, people looking at me and me being on stage was not something I wanted to. When I was younger, of course, we had to do our I can't remember. I never was involved in like the debate team in school or involved in any of the speaking. I was never in speech. I was never in any of those types of things in school. And so I wasn't comfortable. I can't really say I wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't something that I was, felt like I was fluent in.
Right.
Yeah. And
well, for me, I was very different. I wasn't in any of that stuff either, but I was very outgoing. I was very, very outgoing. And for me, it was just, I guess they would call me crazy because I was into everything. I was so outgoing. And so, yeah, but I can understand not being a part of this, but having this.
Yeah, I was like, it definitely opened me up to some different types of how do I say it, of going out, putting myself out there to say that I didn't need to be in the background and didn't need to be just a little shy person. It definitely brought me to a place where I could get up and I could get in front of somebody and not be afraid. The mime training was, first of all, because through the mime you never talked,
right? Or
if you did, it was.
So was that like a safety thing for you? Did it feel like a safety thing for you?
The mime, you mean?
Yeah, the mime part of it, because you didn't have to speak. You didn't have to do the things that you were kind of afraid to do.
I think it was to a certain degree that yes, it was a safety net. But you know what? Also, I think in a place where I wasn't confident in myself to get up in front of people and actually speak in front of people and say things because I honestly didn't think that I spoke well. And I remember one conversation that I had with my pastor's wife. She said, well, what are you asking God for? And I said, well, I don't want to ask God for being, I don't want to talk. I don't want to. I'm not good at talking. I'm not good at saying things. I'm not quick-winded or quick speaking, or I don't have that. Like, that's not a natural part of me. But then it was funny because she said, well, just trust in what God has for you. And then I was praying and, kind of having a conversation with God. And I said, you should just ask somebody else to do this. And in myself and in my conversation with God, he said, okay, Moses. Okay, Moses.
Kind of funny there.
Yeah. He said, okay, I'll have somebody else do it, but I want you to do it.
But it was almost, the way you're talking about it, it was almost like a mime was tailor-made for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very much, because then I didn't have to, and I felt comfortable not needing to come up with a conversation or come up with words to say to people, but I could do it with my actions. You
didn't have to worry about lines. You don't have to worry about lines. You don't have to worry about memorization.
No.
I mean, moves were memorization, but yeah.
Yes, I didn't have to actually sit there and say, okay, I have to spend this much time, and I didn't have to dedicate myself to learning, like you said, learning those lines to go out and to, speak those lines and use my voice. And I didn't have to. And I think that was that thing that actually got me out there to say, okay, it's okay to be in front of people, not saying something, but in front of people. Because I think that was another thing that I had issues with, is being in front of people and everybody looking at me.
Okay.
I had I was just very insecure with people looking at me.
So fast forward. because I remember seeing pictures of the mime. I don't remember that part of it. I remember coming in and you guys, I don't know if you were, it was just the youth. But I remember my in and out between those 3 years of 90 and 93. You guys had formed the dance team originally.
Yes. Yes.
And I had kind of taken over because a lot of the members had gone, or or you, because again, when all that went down, I went into the world. She had went into the world, and kind of lived our lives, and had come to a place around 93 like we were devastated. I mean, things had happened in our life that really brought us back to church. So I remember coming back in 93, seeing some things and hearing some of the pictures, and hearing some of the things that you guys were doing in dance. But I guess, again, we had come back, and now we were in our 20s. You know, we it was 93, so we had both just turned 20 within that year. We were probably 19 at the time, maybe because I came back in March. My birthday wasn't until July, so I was probably 19 when I came back to the church. 93, went into 94, and now I'm ministering, and you're you were pregnant at the time, because again, life had happened to us, and it was at that moment where for a season it was me. You were kind of and you had had the baby, and so I was the one that was heading it up, and so you would kind of come around when I was ministering, and so that led into us eventually dating, and then in 95 we got married, and at that point I had taken a year off. I had taken a year off to focus on our marriage, and I kind of thought ministry was done there, and so that was kind of a hard point, because I had built up to do ministry, and I thought, well, what the heck, I just had ministry. And then around 97 we formed Represent, and that's where we started doing me and another a really good friend of mine, a brother, I really consider him a brother. We formed Represent and started doing hip hop. And at that point, again, it was something in a sense that I was doing. And somehow you had been singing before. Right. Somehow you were like, well, maybe I can sing. So our first meeting, Chris was coming to the house, and we were gonna put this song together, or we were gonna see what we were gonna do. I don't even think at that time we even had an idea of putting a group together. It was mentioned that he was wanting to rap and that we were doing stuff, and so we had kind of thrown it out there that this was a possibility. So here we were that night, like the perfect storm happened, and we formed our first song. You remember that?
Yeah, we were in you guys were downstairs in our basement, and I could hear the music, of course. And so I don't know how it happened that I ended up coming downstairs.
Well, you were watching the kids at the time.
Yeah. And then I ended up coming downstairs, and I said, and I just was kind of listening, and I could hear to the music, I could just hear the lyrics that could go to that music.
Yeah, because you wrote the chorus that night.
Yes.
It was crazy because I had my lyrics because I had been rapping, because before, around 94, the church had been done. Pastor moves to Tulsa. That was one of the reasons why we got married, and so I had went with my friend that was in my basement. At this point of the story, I was going with him as he would preach to churches at other churches, and I was kind of the entertainment. I was the one rapping, and so again, that's why when we came together, I was like, well, I could show him a thing or two. I can, and pride. And so that night, he was bringing lyrics that he was writing. I had lyrics that I had already written, songs that were already formed and created to just instrumental tracks that you find. You find these bass, back in the day it was bass CDs where it was just instrumentals. And so I'd written these lyrics to that. So I was bringing my lyrics, he was bringing his lyrics, and they just flowed together. And so we wrote our first song that night, but we didn't have a hook. You know, so we were just sitting there, and all of a sudden, you step in.
Yeah, and I just felt like, you know, hey, can I try something? And and then you guys said, wow, okay, that works just perfectly. And so that's how I was able to get in with Represent. And so, it was my first introduction of actually being involved in the rapping and the that culture, because I wasn't involved in that. I was, you know, I would sing in high school, and then I would sing, you know, with my own with a backup track for myself, and be able to sing in high school, and in front of people in the church, and where I did feel safe, that people in the church wouldn't be looking at me and just laughing at me or whatever. They would just be appreciative of the fact that I was using my gift.
So in the course of the next 3 years, we wrote enough material to drop an album.
Yes.
So we dropped the first album,
Yes.
One Life.
Yes.
You're on it singing. Me and Chris are rapping. And I think at that point, and that was around 2000, God spoke to you. And I was at work. I had some instrumental beats that we had gotten from it now, because we had a producer, and I had gotten a beat tape with just instrumentals on it. And so you grabbed that tape when I came home from work, and what happened?
Well, then I went. I had been writing all day long. You know, of course, I had at that point, I had 2 kids that I was taking care of. So I had the 2 kids that I had to take care of during the day, but I just started getting these lyrics to these beats that you had, and I started trying to practice what they were, and actually then first, you know, to be honest, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I'm sure we did at some point, that I showed them to our producer, and he was like, wow. And actually I didn't even show him the lyrics. Well, yeah, I showed him the lyrics to one of your songs, and he was just like, wow, your flow was really good, and your flow was pretty amazing. And then he
there's
just
a whole story behind that.
Well,
we're not going to share it today, but there was a whole story. So I come home from work. This is what I was trying to key in on. So I come home from work, and I walk in the door, and what is the first thing you tell me?
Well, I said, hey, I have something to show you, but if you laugh at me, I'm never going to do this again. And
so she proceeds to grab the cassette tape, put it in the tape deck, play the tape. And again, I'm not going to go into the story. I'm just going to give you the cliff notes. And spits this verse that was just amazing. And it was at that moment God said, I need you to walk away from Represent, was the name of the group. I need you to walk away from Represent and create One Flesh. And it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make, because we had worked to this point of actually making the album. And I think, if I remember right, I had been pushing for the album. So here we are, I'm pushing for the album to happen, and now I'm the one that's going to leave. So fast forward again, I'm not going to go into the details, because I'm writing a book on it right now, and all of these stories are in that book. And so here we are as One Flesh now. One Flesh now, we're recording music and doing shows, and our flavor was a little different.
Yes.
Why? Why would you say our flavor was a little different?
Well, I think what the biggest thing was is that I would sing, and I would just be singing at the beginning, and then after the chorus would come up, and then you had your lyrics and you were already rapping, and then at the end, or maybe the last verse, I would come in and I would spit my lyrics. So it was definitely a new opportunity for me to get out of my shell. And like I was talking about before, that I didn't want to be in front of people. I didn't like to talk in front of people. But with this, it was a whole new avenue. And I think that it was crazy how it all happened. It wasn't something that we could have done ourselves, but it was something that was definitely God-born.
But what was the reaction of the crowd?
Well,
From your point of, I can tell from my point of view, but from your point of view, what was the reaction from the crowd?
well, at first they would just be like, yeah, okay, she's singing, and they'd be kind of vibing to what I was singing, and they would still be vibing to the beat. And then all of a sudden, I would bust out some lyrics, and they were like, "What? So I mean, that was a huge like, oh, okay, this is good. I don't have to be afraid of this.
Yeah, that's
I
what
don't
I
have to
remember.
do this
That's what I
anymore.
remember.
I can do this, and people are liking it. Because I always had that instance where I was always thinking, I'm always in my head. Now, even today, I'm still in my head, but I was always in my head saying, well, they're not going to like me. They're not going to like anything that I have to say. And it gave me a new confidence of getting out there and just doing it. And just stepping forward and just saying, okay, I can do this. I can rap. And I didn't like it. I didn't like rap at the beginning. I was like...
Yeah, so that's part of the story. You know, when I went to God about this whole situation, it'll be in the book. So, we're ministering as one flesh, doing concerts all over. That was only one part of what I wanted you to express. But it was very different from Represent, because Represent was something we had done mainly in Christian circles. We had done Represent in churches, we had done Represent in outreaches, we did some community events, but most of what we did was inside the church or some sort of a church outreach. When we were doing One Flesh, and we were being asked to be in various different places. Right?
Right.
Right.